Seth. Seth tells me that he's an agronomist, and he's just about to start getting very busy, but his Nuffield study was on Sea Buckthorn, or Hippophae rhamnoides, as a niche crop. Sea Buckthorn, it has a tremendous potential, being full of vitamins. It's a product I've been quite interested in, and have had various forms of it, juice and yogurt and ice cream over the years, and thought, you know, that really is something quite different. And he's going to tell us how he got you interested in originally, the original story, I think, how it first came to his notice. And we'll be able to quiz him at the end. So without any further ado, I will share my screen with you, and we'll see the Rick Stein program, which featured Seth Pascoe and his Hippophae rhamnoides, his Sea Buckthorn. And I just kick this off. I hope you can all see that. Where are we? Are we ready to roll?
Often preach. And during my time here in the West Country, I've met many who know how much this county has to offer, especially when it comes to food. I like to call them food heroes, those going out on a limb, pushing boundaries, exploring new opportunities. And during the research for this series, we found a man who is doing just that.
I'm on my way today to meet Seth Pascoe, who claims he's discovered a new superfood, and I'm not going to tell you what it is until we get there.
For the last 4 years, Seth has been quietly planting a small orchard of extraordinary plants.
Good afternoon, Rick.
Afternoon. Seth,
Welcome to Cornwall's first Sea Buckthorn orchard.
well, I've seen them on the cliffs, but I've never seen as many as that.
Sea buckthorn, or sea berry as it's sometimes known, is a shrub that grows wild along Britain's coastline.
I don't recall them being very juicy, so we'll see what these are like. Ow! I haven't even picked one.
The one big drawback of this bush is that it is very prickly, and hand picking like this is literally painfully slow.
Let me just tell you what they taste like.
You'll get like a real explosion first off.
They are incredibly sour, but I mean, without the sourness, you can see they're very nice. They've got a sort of slight tropical fruit, I would dare to say, like almost passion fruit taste about them.
Absolutely.
Not as intense, but
Very
yeah.
sort of citrusy, aren't they?
Yeah. What's in this?
They're renowned for being really high vitamin C, sort of 10 times the amount of orange is sort of commonly touted thing. But they've also got vitamin E, vitamin A, that's vitamin A is obviously the bright orange colour, omega oils, omega 3, 6, 7, and 9, so it's sort of full spectrum of all the oils which you normally eat from oily fish or macadamia nuts.
Is that the same oil as oily fish? Omega 3?
Yeah.
So in fact, what you're almost suggesting, if you're a vegan, you could live on these and never have to have a supplementary pill in your life.
Potentially. Mother Nature's made this and it's synergistic, so rather than you popping various different supplements, this is a ready-made package really.
How would you cook with them?
Well, they're very versatile actually. I mean, in savouries such as the seafood or roast chicken, it's quite good with goat's cheese and bits and pieces like that. And then in desserts, sort of sorbets or possets.
If you make a sorbet with them, is it bright orange?
Yeah, absolutely, all the colour comes through. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So how long would this orchard take to grow? I mean, how long has it been mature enough to produce fruits?
We planted this orchard about 3 or 4 years ago. This is our first sort of real harvest of any significance.
What would you get? How much sort of weight off a tree like this then?
Hopefully like 5 kilos per tree. And this tree may well do it.
Yeah. And how long would they go on for then?
The tree should last for 20 years.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a good crop, really.
Yeah, it should be climate versatile as well because it's in the ground. They should learn to adapt to all the sort of vagaries of the climate, whatever they might be. I've got some juice here. Let's try some juice.
Yeah, I'd love to. Is there any sugar in it? Because I would favour a little bit of sugar.
Sugar-free, but what we've done, Rick, is we've blended it off with apple juice. So the apple juice sort of carries the sea berry juice and just balances the flavour.
that just apple juice in there?
It is apple juice and seaberry.
It doesn't taste sour at all.
So it's well balanced, isn't it?
That is very nice.
Yes. I think it should be.
So exciting is this discovery. It's been given funding from the Nuffield Farming Scholarship, and its berries are now being used by food producers to flavour many things, including chocolate, tonic water, and vodka.
I know they're native to Cornwall, but where did you come up with the idea then?
I came across these in the fall. I was doing a trek to Everest Base Camp, and
As you do.
once we got up to sort of 4,000 meters, the altitude sickness started kicking in, and feeling pretty groggy, headaches, dizziness, the usual sort of things. The chef came out with a juice much the same colour as this and said, "Drink this, and it'll sort you out." Brilliant. So next day we woke up and felt right as rain, and like, wow, what is this stuff? And the sort of farmer bit kicked into action for me. I was like, what is this plant? Where does it grow? And they said, oh, and they pour these superfruit. And I learned it at Sea Buckthorn. I came home, researched it, and it turns out it grows in Cornwall.
Superfood it is.
Very much so.
I suppose I'm going to give you a hand picking, but you know, they're your thorns.
They are, yeah. It's a labour of love. And
It is.
one year I cut all the thorns off to
Did you?
see if it made a difference, and she grew all the thorns back the following year. Bigger ones, if anything.
So do it by hand.
Seth's berries have given me an idea for a simple dish.
Right, stop sharing. Right, okay.
She wants to watch it.
Are you unmuted, Seth?
I am, yes.
Okay, so would you like to fill us in more? I think that was an excellent piece of filming there, and I thought you came over very naturally and got all the important facts in. Well done.
Thank you very much, Alan. We were delighted with how it came across, to be honest. You never quite know with TV crews, etc., how they can manipulate things surprisingly well to make it portray how they want to. But no, we were absolutely delighted with how it all came across. Yeah, so basically, to carry on from there, I recognise several names in the room here, and thank you all for coming to listen to me. Stephen, I remember you giving me an absolute grilling on my Nuffield interview, saying, you know, where are you going to go with these berries? Have they got a future and all this sort of thing? And I often ask myself at my lowest times whether maybe you're right. But so my background is I'm a frustrated farmer. My parents had a small holding, and I got lured away by a big shiny kit. My dad had a walk behind rotavator, and that wasn't enough. And then agricultural college, and then once agricultural college finished, most people go back to the farm. That wasn't an option for myself. So I went on to Cirencester and studied crop production, and with a view to sort of a career in agronomy. When I graduated from Cirencester, the arable industry was in dire straits with wheat at sort of £65 a tonne, and none of the agronomy companies were taking on trainees. So I had a spell in fresh produce, working for Langmead Farms down in Sussex. After that, I went out to Canada, Alberta, Canada, ran a potato farm for 4 years. And then it was once I finished in Canada and I was making my way back to Cornwall, I went to the Himalayas, and that's where I first came across Sea Buckthorn. And I wasn't really looking out for a crop by any means. It was just, well, I was feeling dreadful, myself and my friend Kieran, and if the Sherpa said, here's an iron bar, if you gnash on that, it'll cure your altitude sickness, I probably would have given it a go, because it's very debilitating. So, but it did pique my interest right away. And once I returned from the Himalayas, well, as is the modern way now, I Googled Sea Buckthorn, and there was only about 2 or 3 pages of results. And then I was walking my dog, funnily enough, on the local cliff path, and I identified Sea Buckthorn growing wild there, and that just sort of kicked a thought off for me. And so I managed to locate 100 plants initially. I stuck them in the ground to see what happened, and they grew. So that was quite promising. And my dad was like, well, what are you going to do with these things? You know, 100's neither here nor there. It's a drop in the ocean. You don't know anything about them, this, that, and the other. And at the time, I'd just been on a chemical company sponsored trip to Belgium, and I met a Nuffield scholar, Ellis Luckhurst, who I think he might be part of this group perhaps, but he works for a brassica group down in West Cornwall, and he said, you should do a Nuffield with that. So, blimey, do you think they consider it? Because it was quite far-fetched, but this was in June, and I had until July to apply. So I got home and rushed through the paperwork and submitted it. And lo and behold, after Stephen gave me a grilling at my interview, I was awarded a Nuffield scholarship. So that was sort of a pivotal moment then, really, because it enabled me to go around and learn more about the growing of the crop. But actually, Jonathan Jones, who's also on here, I mean, he was one of my first visits, and his advice to me still rings true every day. I'm in the Seaberry sort of mindset, and his advice to me was, don't get stuck in the grower mind frame. You need to be focused on marketing, and that is particularly the crop like Sea Buckthorn, which is still relatively unheard of in the Western world. It's so pertinent. So Jonathan, thank you ever so much for those words of wisdom. They really do mean a lot. Yeah, so off I set. I went to India to the International Sea Buckthorn Association conference, and this is quite a bizarre sort of collection of individuals, mostly from Asia, China, Mongolia, India, Kazakhstan, and all the stans really, and a big Russian and sort of and a Russian contingency as well, really sort of Siberian rather. And there's astounding amount of research. Some of the papers presented at the conference were really getting into the nitty gritty of some quite depths to which, I mean, I just thought it was a berry and I could juice it, maybe sell the juice, but they were looking at sort of the effects of the bionutrient profile, etc., on stomach ulcers and all these sort of things. But a lot of this sort of goes under the radar slightly because it's not from what you sort of say as well, it's not on peer-reviewed papers, so it gets disregarded a bit by the Western society because it's not from sort of critically acclaimed universities. It's sort of off the radar, I guess you call them. But there's in the sort of Sea Buckthorn fraternity, as it were, there is a lot of work being done, and this is partially how Sea Buckthorn didn't come into the fore in the first place, is because if you look at where it's growing in the world, it's predominantly all the sort of the old Cold War countries, so East Germany, all the Baltic states, Russia, China, Mongolia. So largely with a sort of, when Sea Buckthorn the industry was developing in those countries, all the investment was done inwardly, and they didn't spend time promoting it to the Western society because, well, why would they? So that's why it's quite insular, and it's only now just sort of stretching out to the Western world. And there's a lot of plantations in Canada now, and a few in America as well. So yes, from India I went out to China as well, right out to, I think, is it Inner or Outer Mongolia, where everyone pretends to say where they go and get lost, but that's where I was. And in China they use Sea Buckthorn for two purposes. One's for ground reclamation and sort of stability, really, so conservation purposes. They actually and I don't quite understand still how this works, but they broadcast Sea Buckthorn by helicopter onto the sandstone deserts, and some of them appear to take and grow on the sides of these barren sandstone deserts. And they're pioneering plants. They love being the first plant to sort of claim an area, and they do hold the soil well together. And the Chinese professor I was with told me that these Sea Buckthorn plantations have reduced the amount of sediment going through the Yellow River. It was in the hundreds of thousands of tons by which it reduced, because any rainfall event, it just gullies off the desert straight into the Yellow River and off it goes. And the Chinese government view the Yellow River as the health of the Yellow River is like the health of the nation. It's like the heartbeat of the nation. So anything they could do to sort of try and make that river healthier was sort of paramount importance. So that's what they were doing. And they're also doing lots of Sea Buckthorn plantations on deserts out west of Beijing, to prevent these. They get some really fierce, nasty sandstorms that sort of just shut down Beijing, basically. And since they've done that, planting Sea Buckthorn, that had also reduced not the incidence, but the severity of the sandstorms into Beijing. So of the sort of 2 to 5 million hectares in China that is the national crop area, I think only it's in the thousands of acres actually harvested commercially for fruit, and the sort of the 4.5 million acres is more is sort of conservation. That's not to say there's not a sort of a foraging contingency, and you know, people do go out into the wilds to harvest these fruits, but by and large, they're it's as much conservation as it is commercial. So from China, I then ventured back to Europe and did a lap of Europe, basically Romania, Hungary, Latvia, Sweden. From Sweden, I was going to northern Germany, although, and this is one of the times where you just realize that the sort of the niceties and the benefits of social media. I was bored on the train from Uppsala in Sweden, next stop Hamburg, in some sort of 8 or 10 hours time via 2 ferries as well. And the lady tweeted me saying, why don't you get off at Denmark? There's a lovely, Copenhagen, there's a lovely restaurant there that does sea buckthorn, go and check it out. So there's so much negativity associated with social media. This was actually a real glow moment for me, because it really showed the positives of social media. So I did exactly that. I stopped in Copenhagen, I hired myself a bike, and I went to my first ever Michelin-starred restaurant on my own. And which is a bit of a bizarre experience in itself, to be honest. But I had the privilege of explaining to the chef why I was there on my own and what I was doing, and he was only too happy to show me his sea buckthorn creation, which was it was a sort of cheesecake cum meringue dessert, and the meringues were all sort of spiky and in the shape of a hedgehog, so it looked like a hedgehog, and when you cut it open, there was a sort of sea buckthorn base to it, which is very good. So from there into Germany and visiting plant raisers and some commercial orchards there, and Germany is really at the sort of the forefront of pushing the industry there. There's some big growers. There's one grower who's even built himself a mechanical harvester. It's Germans that are sort of pushing the cut and freeze technique, which I'll come on to in a moment. And having sort of met some growers there and looked at some of the products, there's even, believe it or not, a sea buckthorn world in Germany where literally everything is orange, and you can buy sea buckthorn gummy bears, sea buckthorn toothpaste, you name it, it's pretty much there. It was a sort of a real moment. So it really opened my eyes, and I came home, and in writing my Nuffield report, it was sort of like, well, where has this gone from now? So it was 100 trees become 300 trees, but it was still not a hobby, but just sort of an interest, I suppose you could call it. And having completed Nuffield, I thought, you know, I think there's got to be some legs in this. So then I applied for a farm business tenancy with the Duchy of Cornwall, and I took on my first 6 acres. And the 6 acres I took on, we had to chainsaw our way into the gate to get into the field. It had been abandoned in the late 80s or early 90s, I think it was, and had just grown into, you know, thickets of brambles and willows and rushes and you name it. So it did take a bit of reclamation. The Duchy were very, very kind, and they put some money into the pot. They were sort of, I think they're a bit embarrassed really, because it's right by the main road, and they decided to chip in and help me sort of reclaim the field. Now that the field isn't particularly ideal in one respect, because it is in this time of year in the winter, it does sit quite wet, and sea buckthorn don't particularly like having wet feet. So for me personally, it's always a relief, as it is now, when I see the trees budding up and not too far away. Hopefully the bud burst and we'll be away again. But in the depth of December, when there's horizontal rain sheeting down, it's always a concern back in my mind, whether the sea buckthorn is happy here or not. But they grow prolifically, and that they seem to be quite happy. I did have a bit of mortality initially, but within what my expectations were. So I planted some, I think it's about an orchard, about 3,000 trees in total in that plot. And one of the highlights of the Rick Stein clip for me was the drone footage, which I've yet to see, but that was all laid out with baler twine and triangulation and lots of stakes and swearing. And from the drone footage, I was delighted, because they look quite parallel and straight. So something went right. Yeah. So after that, it was a sort of a case of sitting back and trying to learn how to work with these trees really. And the main problem is it is a steep learning curve. whilst I can call on advice from my friends and my friends on the continent that I met on my Nuffield scholarship, the UK sort of growing community is very small. I know Chris Newnham's on here. He's had a dabble, and I think he'll testify to the fact that they're awkward plants to work with, and not just the harvest, the growing things. There's no reference book you can take off the shelf and say, right, it looks like this, so it needs a bit of manganese, or it needs something doing to it. It's just sort of you just sort of go along and a lot of gut feeling and sort of fingers crossed and seeing what happened really. So the first 100 trees started fruiting on my parents' plot there, and I actually hand harvested those and roped a couple of people in. Hand harvesting is literally brutal. It's painfully slow in the fact that it's about 1 kilo an hour, and that's only for the first 2 hours, and after that you're down to less. It's just not feasible. Even with a massive workforce, they do one day, they wouldn't come back again. So this is the biggest sort of obstacle in the way of commercialization of sea buckthorn is the harvesting process. It is, and also that this sort of chicken egg. There's no one really breeding the plants because the market's not sufficient enough to warrant a lot of time going into breeding. So no one's actually looked at breeding the sort of the berry to rattle off the tree, as it were, or anything like that. So it's not a true berry, so there's no abscission point. So if the berry's ripe and you go to pull the berry off, more than likely the berry will explode. So it's not you basically get going a little bit ahead of the berries being ripe, but even then some of the berries will explode, and it's just each berry is 1 gram. And you're hoping for 5 kilos per tree. It's just not feasible. Now there are some varieties that are less thorny, particularly the Siberian genetics, but the Siberian genetics don't like the UK, or particularly not Cornwall. I think there's a grower over in Essex, David Eagle, who has got Siberians, and they have somewhat adapted to the Essex climate, but in down here I got 10 and they all died within a year, I think. They just gave up. They don't like it doesn't get cold enough for them, so they never really go dormant, and they don't like the fact that they wake up at Christmas and start sort of thinking, let's have a go, and then we get a frost in January and they go, oh, hang on a minute, so they sort of slow down again. And so I grow the German varieties because they are bred in northern Germany, which is sort of the most maritime climate of the sort of the breeding grounds. There's a few breeders in one in Romania, one in Latvia. I've actually got some Latvian plants now. I planted those last year. The Latvian plants are quite heavy croppers, a much bigger berry, but they don't like aggressive harvesting techniques. So that the current harvesting technique, which is feasible, although it's still both labor and energy intensive, is you prune the berry laden branch, and you have to make a judgment on how much of a tree to prune. But basically the berries form on 2-year-old wood, and you prune the berry laden branch, you toss it in a dolav, that goes back to the freezer. Once it's frozen for sort of 24 hours or so, maybe a bit longer, you can then whack the branch on anything hard, and 99% of the berries will all fall off. So this actually facilitates some good output in terms of you can clear a good lot of trees in a day, and basically your limiting factor is once your freezer gets full, you've got to process all those berries off the branches and then go again. But it also necessitates having double the amount of trees that you need, because at any given time you've harvested one block, so the block is regenerating, and vice versa. And actually there's evidence to say that some varieties will crop better on the 3rd year, so then you might actually be leaving a proportion of your orchard to go again for another year. So the harvesting is the significant challenge, and there's no easy way around it that I can see. In terms of costing, it probably represents 75 to 80% of the growing cost is the harvest, and that is the harvest labor and the harvest energy. I built my own processing machine from an old fertilizer spreader and a load of old stainless steel that I had kicking around, and a lot of patience and experimenting. There's no real kit that's off the shelf. Certainly the principles you can use from sort potato equipment and fruit equipment, but it is sort of basically having a go yourself. So I'm currently at the moment building a sample cleaner, because my big berry shaker gets the berries off the branch, but it also gets these tiny little 2 to 3 mil bits of twig as well. So I'm just trying to sift those out the sample as well. So that's what the current bits of kit I'm building at the moment. There you can buy kit or people to make the kit, but it grabs really deep pockets, which I can't justify on the scale I'm at. So I think 3 or 4 years ago we featured on Country File off the back of Anna Jones, I think, really saw my my Nuffield presentation up in Newcastle, I think it was, when we presented. And actually anyone that attended the Newcastle conference would have had, knowingly or not, would have had Sea Buckthorn sorbet, which was served at the conference banquet. So that was a good thing for us as well, really, to get that out and to get sort of have the privilege and honour of serving our produce at the conference, but actually just get people to experience the produce, and those people will then go home and say, "Oh yeah, I've had that," and that builds the momentum for the product. And I've really noticed that since the Himalayas, that the product, the awareness and sort of the momentum behind the product has grown considerably. So from a handful of Google results when I first came back, now there's all manner of sort of results on Sea Buckthorn. Yeah, right from some rather bold and tenuous health claims, which I'd be very hesitant to stand behind myself. But through to sort of run of the mill stuff. There's some guys in West Cornwall that make tonic water from it to mix with your gin. I'm supplying a chocolatier down in Falmouth. He makes some bespoke Easter eggs for some of the top end London shops, and he also makes some Sea Buckthorn truffles, which are very good. And he's hoping he needs to get a freeze dryer to do this, but he's hoping to make a Sea Buckthorn black chocolate bar, because he thinks that would be, if not the bestseller, but one of his best sellers going forward. The challenge with Sea Buckthorn is that the sea berry is a tart berry, so it's not a punnet fruit. And for me, any sort of ambition of selling a punnet fruit is just like pushing water uphill. So I mean, you can quite quickly overcome that obstacle by adding a whack of sugar. But when you're trying to say that this is a healthy berry, you can't add loads of sugar in, because you're basically just undoing any benefits of the health benefit you're claiming. So we've been messing around with various juice formulations, and the one that Rick Stein drank there was basically just pure apple juice and sea berry juice on a ratio that we've been messing around with for a little while. We also entertained the idea of honey in there, mango, but they did bring something to the mix, but in terms of flavour and sweetness, but they also brought complication. So I'm a big believer in keeping it simple, and actual apple and sea berry juice works really well. So we're currently doing shelf life tests and all the boring legal stuff, such as the label, nutritional analysis, with a view to getting our juice product launched hopefully later this spring. And then that'll be a real sort of, we were hoping to get it, obviously it makes sense to get it live to coincide with Rick Stein's appearance, but Christmas and a few other things got in the way. It just wasn't feasible, unfortunately. But nevertheless, the Rick Stein appearance gave us some serious sort of credibility, and our website got a lot of attention and traffic, so we were delighted with that. And social media, etc. We've got a lot of new followers and bits and pieces, and a lot of really positive leads, including some chefs, which I've been trying to sort of tame a good chef down here for a while. I appreciate the hospitality industry is under significant pressure at the moment, but we've had some people come forward to saying, when we open, we want to stock your berries, and they're proud of the fact that they are the provenance factor, really, which is good, because as a UK grower, our cost of production are sizable. I think you can buy sea berries on Amazon for, if not pence, but maybe £1 a kilo. By comparison, it really needs to be £20 a kilo to stand a chance of making money with it. That's where our price is, and that's probably generous. And so so we've really got to push the provenance side of things and quality. Some of the quality of the Chinese berries and Indian berries, and by the time they get here, they're looking pretty rough. So yeah, we've really got to sort of get behind our provenance really. So that's where our focus is, and on building the brand. So that's why for myself, it's never been selling a Seaberry as a Seaberry per se. It's been about building the brand and capturing that value and turning it into a juice. We sell the pomace once it's been juiced to the chocolatier. There's some also going to a skincare company. We've got a lovely guys down in St Agnes, West Cornwall, doing a good beer with it now. That's turned into one of his best sellers. He did it as a sort of a summer limited edition, and it's actually become a sort of staple of his brewing now. And a few other things like that. We've just got into a jam with a lady in Falmouth, and that's going great guns. Last year or 2 years ago, a lady called Claire got in touch with us from Dartmoor, I beg your pardon, and she made a marmalade with the sea berries. And actually, it seems quite bizarre because obviously a Seville is quite a powerful berry, and the sea berry is quite powerful. So you wouldn't think there'd be a likely partnership, but she sent them off to the World Marmalade Awards up in the Lake District, and it won a double gold. So that was a real kind of cool thing. And it got, again, it's just getting that name out there. She put our stickers on the jar, said made with Cornish Seaberries, and it's just getting that name. We want to make Seaberry sort of a household name really, and raising that familiarity with it. On my Nuffield in or certainly Latvia, Sweden and Germany, sort of your average person on the street would know what, well, in those countries it's in Sweden it's Havtorn, in Germany it's Sandorn, and I can't remember what it is in Latvia, but they would know that is a healthy fruit, and whereas we go into a supermarket, there's a Seaberry product on the shelf in the supermarket, and they'll grab it as a healthy drink or a fridge pack for their family because they know it's packed with vitamin C or whatever it is. But they just the societal knowledge is there that it is a healthy berry, whereas here it's getting there, but it's not widely known, and that's fine, because if it went berserk overnight, we wouldn't be able to keep up. And so I think there's room for people to be having a go with this, and I have been encouraging growers to dabble with it, but under no, I make no promises. I've been very upfront with them and said, it's not there's no existing market per se. It's not an off-the-shelf business model by any means. The harvesting problem, I can't see anything changing in that for certainly the near future, if not altogether. So that it's definitely got plenty of obstacles, but I'm of the view that the more the merrier. So the more of us that can do this, we can work together, and we can get this out there, and it's all about the greater good, right? So we're going to hopefully make the population will become aware of sea berries, and hopefully become would like to try the products and enjoy the health benefits they may bring. So on that note, there's omega-7, omega-3, 6, 9, vitamin C, A, E. There's about 190 bionutrient compounds in Sea Buckthorn total. So there's a lot going on in there, and it's all synergistically formed. It's not synthesized in a lab. It's been grown by nature. So that's the wonderful thing about it.
Okay. Do you want anything more, Seth, before we go to question and answer?
I don't think so. That sort of brings us up to date, Alan, really.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. I think the best way, what's the format normally on these Nuffield Zooms? Do you all unmute or put your hand up? And
Yeah, Alan, in terms of what might be easiest is if hands up, and it'll allow you to see, and then I've just made it so anyone that puts their hand up is able to unmute themselves.
Okay, thank you.
But you might need to ask everyone to turn their cameras on for you to be able to see who sat with their hand up.
Yes, that would certainly help. So yes, please turn